What's good with the YouTube? You already know Big Flocko with a comics perspective, and I'm gonna slide on through with a little bit of energy. Please hit the like, subscribe, comment, do all those things to help support this channel, and hit that bell notification for future fire content. As you can tell by the title and thumbnail, we're gonna get straight to it. Did the Nuestra Familia leadership take back control of the street regiments out there in the calles? I can tell you right now that the federal faction on the street have took control over San Jose and Salinas. See, San Jose's been kind of like a mess the last 2 years. And those are they'll have positions because you'd have some individuals that would have certain sides of San Jose, and different hoods were reporting to different factions and branches, and so somehow things are all now going in one direction under one vendetta now. It ain't this person reporting to the state or feds or whatnot. The feds have control of the streets now. So the previous RC, right? He got caught up in the state indictment, right? But at the same time, he was kind of maneuvering to where he was, was in contact with the federal faction guys, right? But was still honoring what was expected of him in the state. Kind of played it how he had to play it, man, politically. I think he knew indictments were coming, though. But that's neither here nor there. Afterwards, you had individuals within the state that were trying to, reestablish certain areas, contacts, and people that they had that they were sending out there, man. Believe it or not, there was more than one person that was trying to have different control of areas in San Jose at that time. Right now, though, everything is under the feds. You know what I'm saying? If anybody's reporting anybody in the state, that's probably just a crew that's operating out there. I don't know if that's rogue or independently, or if they have the blessings of the feds to do so. Same thing with Salinas. Salinas is now under the federal fucking leadership again. And it didn't last long, but the state actually had Salinas, believe it or not, for a minute, man. It was kind of a back and forth tug of war about who was out there. And as you know, out there in the streets, blood was spilt over this conflict about who was in charge, who was in leadership positions. You know what I'm saying? As we know, fucking individual named Spankio got hit out there on the streets with his wife. You know what I mean? He was supposed to get out there to establish the regiment for the state, but within I think a week or two of getting hit out there, he got hit. Now, as we already know, the states tried to pull a few individuals from Salinas, right? They've done a lot from San Jose, and I think that was basically for, a lot of that, I believe, was to try to maintain control. You know what I'm saying? Those areas are probably the most lucrative, them in Tulare County, maybe the more lucrative counties as far as within the ENF's past, regiments. And I think both state and feds know that. And like I said, though, there was a little bit of turmoil out there in Salinas for a minute. It was hard to trust anybody, believe it or not. But they've kind of reestablished that this is all under federal control once again, which makes sense because a lot of those dudes in the feds that are from Salinas are well respected. They were, a lot of them were in the hood. They were kicking back. They were treating a lot of gente manpower fucking right. And people don't forget that. You know what I'm saying? And then you got this new wave of individuals. Some of them haven't proven anything or made their bones, and they're stepping out. Yes, they're being respected for their status, right? But that status has been stamped by the state. And people don't look at the state, C's that got recruited recently like they do upon the individuals that are doing time in the feds, You got Pocky, Bubba, Wino, Jerry, what I'm saying? Fucking Rico, even, you know what I mean? All these individuals who have been long-time influences out there in Salinas are in the feds. And a lot of these dudes I know personally, and they know how to treat manpower. And that's a big, big deal, man. Is I think a lot of their interactions with the regiments in the past and how they did their business and did their bidding, I think that helped gain fucking a lot of sway in their direction for the feds to take over. But I think these indictments also were key. As far back as when I was out there, man, I remember in 2003, Chuco, we used to talk, and he was still acknowledging, the old leadership that was in Santa Rita at the time. Maybe they would have been back in Oakland. But he still had a crew out there in San Jose because he wanted me to work with that crew out there in San Jose. And I said, nah, I already got my contacts. And this was in 2003. That's when he was in the county jail on appeal. And he was okay with that, though. When Weechel was next door, he told me that fucking if Weechel goes out to yard and they let's out the yard together, that he was going to move on Weechel, that this was per brass in Santa Rita. And I had no objection to it because I'd already known what Weechel's actions were. So I know back then, Chuka was still in contact and had some loyalty to the feds, right? But he also had his own operations and things going on out there in the streets, which is kind of normal. Now, one big change that they're going back to is they're not allowing regiments to operate and communicate with each other, which is how it's always supposed to have been. But for a while, regiments were communicating with each other, but not to the extent people think. Like as far back as I remember, right, 2000, we weren't really in contact with anybody in the valley unless we were told to go out there to do something. Every once in a while, that had happened. Um, there was people that were in fucking Coco County that were directed to work under us at one time. This was San Jose, and they tried to play both sides, reporting to San Jose and Salinas, from what I was told. In fact, I was supposed to take over the crew. I was supposed to take over the crew that was running Contra Costa County at that time, man. Because they were supposed to be reporting under my channel, and I was taking over. Like I said, everything that my channel had going on in San Jose, which he was the RSD out there, I was supposed to take over that position. You know what I'm saying? As far back maybe as 2007 or 8, I was supposed to take that position. See, before you'd have people that would step out from the state, and next thing you know, they had to get in line with the feds, right? And it was kind of there was a lot of conflict of issues I remember, man. Weechel was one of them. You know, stepping out from the state, yet falling under federal fucking brass, but then yet putting out filters that fucking, other individuals put out there. It was kind of getting confusing. Then you had, Wino came out and fucking stick him up, and they were under the state for a long time, but they had got recruited by dudes that were in the federal leadership positions, man. So even though that they had directions that were coming from Chuco and whatnot, a lot of those directives were being fucking ignored. They were acknowledging Chuco, but they were still under fucking the federal faction, because at that time you had two or three NF wives out there that were collecting fucking dudes from the regiment. At the same time, okay, this is what people don't realize. The same time, the federal fellas, right, were sent to AdMax, where they had limited communication, was a little bit rough, right? The same time that happened, you had the D1, D4 short corridor go down. Their communications were short. They were now isolated from individuals that were rather soldados that would be in their pods that they could send out with messages and whatnot. I remember, I think it was 2005, right? You know what I'm saying? There was a meeting that took place over there in Salinas, and not every C was supposed to go, or anybody, right? But during the discussion, the regiment commander was trying to pull all the different regiments on the streets to report directly to Salinas at that time. And so I remember one of the C's that was in charge of San Jose, and a lot of other individuals came out that had more seniority. I remember that they pretty much were saying that he doesn't know any better, because he's allowing them to do these things because he doesn't know any better. And he's almost giving up the regiments directly back to Salinas and shit, And I know we were sending money orders to individuals in the state, but we had reached out to someone in the feds on our own who had touched down on the main line. Therefore, we were covered at that time, and that was Skip. That was our whole linkage as far as to ignore any directives that were coming from a whole different direction. You know what I mean? I remember in 2006, the state was making a push, DB, Dancing Bear, to establish certain areas that were not operating under a regiment authority, which was places like Modesto and whatnot, and other areas, and I had to shut that down. I remember there was a talking, because one individual that was under DB, right, came back, which was Smilone, right? Or Smiley. He'd been a long time bro, but never successful on the streets. And he tried to get at Travieso as far as, hey, DB is looking for people to put under. And I'm thinking in my head, you don't want to work under DB. It's going to be a complete disaster. And I remember I had to pull Travieso to the side saying, look, man, there's going to be no fucking discussions of fucking street business here, man. It can't take place when I'm the authority in charge here. I'm not sending anybody out unless I know it's an existing regiment that can plug you in. You see, San Jose and Salinas, we didn't really have contact with areas like, Sacramento or Modesto or whatnot. We kind of stayed isolated because we were told to isolate. Later on, there started to be certain individuals that were able to branch out to like Los Baños, Merced, and then actually we did have Merced for a minute. Actually, San Jose did. I forgot about that. When the rap game was going on, and Goose and Skip were still in Rita, and we were operating under their crews, we had fucking like Doc Steto, he was under Big Things Entertainment and whatnot, and then you had Black Steve with the connects to like Never and Lowdown. So we were plugged in with the rap scene for a minute too, and Tiny from fucking from out there, Merced, and all kinds of other individuals, but that slowly fell apart. you know, and we pretty much lost having any type of influence in the area as far as San Jose. But other than that, I think Salinas had a little bit of contact with Tulare County until some seeds got out there. But other than that, you're not supposed to meddle in a whole nother region or even contact business, man. But that shit was going on. The feds are going to be putting that to a halt, as we already know that there is some NOR label affiliates, right? Record labels that are affiliated with NOR that are in San Jose and surrounding areas as well. Now, my opinion and perspective of all this, right? The state's making a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? They do have a lot easier way to communicate. You know what I'm saying? But there has to be a way to make this work. You know what I'm saying? If the federal leadership gets a hold of maintaining some type of money, right, they're going to be happy. I mean, I think that's the whole reason of everything that they kind of want to go down, is that they want to continue to be able to generate income. Now, the state kind of got a little greedy, in my opinion. On some of those prison yards, they're making fucking tons of money. So why the fuck do you have to have that much influence on the streets then? You know what I'm saying? That money could have just been, forwarded to the federal guys. Now, another thing, right, is they've kind of gone back to a system that they've had enforced, but now for a lot of members now, which is time and grade, right? Which you're graded based upon what you've been able to do for the O. You know what I'm saying? And how many years that you have in. Now, our other areas, have they conceded to report to federal leadership and whatnot? Like I said, you got several individuals that have just stepped out in different areas, you know what I'm saying, that came from the feds home. You know what I mean? It's still a little bit of things I think that are worked out. But I think people got to remember, with these indictments that happened 2 years ago, and more indictments probably to come, eventually people are going to have to hit the feds. I think people have to play their cards right. You know what I'm saying? Enjoy the luxuries that you're winning in the state prisons, You're going to have that state leadership, which at this time is basically silencio, right? But at the same time, there's enough money to be made on the yards that they have established, you know what I mean? Solano, Salinas Valley, for the NF to pretty much wet their beaks. Now, the way they've been communicating is probably going to have to stop, man, because you got to remember, right? I don't know what rights prisoners have as far as their privacy, right? Once you're a ward of the state, right? Because you have this program that they established a long time ago called Stingrays, and what they can do with that is they can put up false towers that your cell phone goes off of, and pretty much they can infiltrate everything that you're doing. You may think you're safe with Wicker apps and what apps, but if they're basically recording as you're having these communications, there's no way you could beat that. They can sit there and infiltrate everything that you're doing. Because look, even in the recent indictment, they said they had talks between Chuco and Dragon. How they have tapped? Unless they had a phone tapped, how were they able to get those conversations? I think the biggest thing you got going now is what's going to happen with these guys from the state. Where do they stand when they get to the feds, right? That's a big deal because they're going to all be there for a little bit. And I think the channels that are out there recently, like I said, there was a lot of individuals that were sent with directives from the feds where the state kind of ignored and shut down. Are those pipelines now going to be opened up? Because you still got individuals that are now still in the state, right? A lot of them are trying to figure out which way they need to go, what they need to do, because they've been under one regime for so long, and not knowing everything that's going on between them and the feds, it kind of makes it hard, especially if you're a young C. I say maybe within the next year or so, everybody's going to be reporting basically the feds that are out there on the streets, or it could be someone that just got off the state, but they're going to have to basically account for their monthlies being reported to the feds, man. There's nothing wrong with being in there and being under having one jurisdiction when you're there and having to do what's expected or having a position, right? But once you step out to the streets, you have a whole different type of obligation. You know what I'm saying? Therefore, sometimes the channel you're reporting to changes. You know what I'm saying? So I think there'll be a lot of preparation for anybody stepping out. And I wouldn't be surprised if they end up having one individual that's out there that's in charge of all streets. That's pretty much in contact. That may be the route to go, or if they're going to go back to how it used to be when basically the regiment commander basically reported to those that were in charge of that area. As for other areas, I can't confirm or say who's in charge. I can't sit there and say the state's in charge or Fed is in charge. All I do know is for a fact, Sanjo and Salinas, right? And Salinas had a lot harder struggle, right? But they're now both under federal control. I think what you're going to have here, which makes sense, those that are in the state, that you follow the people who are the leadership, you follow the chain of command that's there for the state. Once you get to the streets, I think you're plugging in with someone who's